Okay. So, welcome everybody. This is the March Astrology Talk. There's a lot going on, as we all can feel, but I want to just begin by saying thank you for joining this community. And uh, anytime you share this information or the archetypal energy that we're now within and share that with others, it's a wonderful thing, I think, to get that bigger view. I'm going to make time for questions. Um, so I'll let you know when that is. I do have a new class coming up. The dates aren't settled yet, but it'll be um, on planetary rulership, which is really like a key to looking deeper into the meaning and themes of the natal chart. So today is March 6, 2026. So to begin with, I want to say we've been talking a lot about this in-between time we're in, where we're at the end of great cycles and the beginning of new cycles. And what I mean by great cycles is the cycles of the outer planets that take many years to go through the whole cycle. So there's been a changing of themes, and we're going to talk about particularly, once again, Pluto and Aquarius. I'm going to define that a little bit more. And also the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, which is very significant right now. And that cycle happens once every 36 years, but it hasn't happened in Aries for a very long time, and not at that first degree of Aries, which is literally like birth. Um, so when I think about this background to this time, I want to just start by saying with Pluto in Aquarius, going through Aquarius, it's now like at 3 or 4 Aquarius, the deeper structures of power in society are being exposed, awakening the collective to question uh, who truly holds influence and how can communities organize themselves. So I'll go into this in more detail, but Aquarius, because Aquarius is the group, Aquarius is the collective, the community networks, uh, organizations, corporations, we're seeing as Pluto goes through it over the next 20 years, 18 now, I believe, it brings up what's been hidden to the surface. Now, at the same time, we have that Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries, which is beginning right now. We started it last year, but its exact beginning is this year. And it'll be going on, this very beginning will be going on all year, even as Saturn moves away from Neptune. Saturn Neptune conjunction, dissolving old structures. Um, and myths, what myths does the country carry? What stories do they carry about who they are? That's dissolving, and then it's igniting. So because it's a new beginning in Aries, it's igniting the search for a new vision of identity and purpose. um, it marks an entirely new beginning. And so we're watching this. We've seen what began last year. Maybe we could say, 2023. We see, and then there's a reaction to it and a response to it. And so then there's more vision arising here. Um, and I want to also say that the tension we feel in the world right now really reflects this threshold we're at, the struggle between fading structures and old authority systems and emerging visions to take us into the future. And during this time, because that Saturn conjunct Neptune can contract and take up its authority to create its own myth, its own illusions, its own story, that very uh, planetary aspect is also awakening the voice of the collective. And we've seen that in the last number of years. So, what's going to be the new story that humanity is trying to birth? And then, how are you feeling this personally in your life? Where do you feel restless? Where do you feel settled? Where do you feel ready to start something new? Where does it feel like there's confusion? You don't know what will be the new for you. So it's kind of like this. I like to go out before the sun comes up. The best for me is if I could go out just before dawn when the stars are still out, but you can see that there's light upon the horizon. And it's very quiet. But in this interim space, night has not yet ended and the day has not yet become. Um, and this is the threshold moment. So this is a symbol of where we are now in the bigger cycles that we're involved in, what's unfolding. So, one of the things we can think about is what new visions are coming in as the structures that we're used to dissolve or are disrupted. And so we see the MAGA vision coming in. We see Trump vision coming in. We see Stephen Miller's vision coming in. There's a lot of different visions coming in. And at the same time, we're looking for what's the new vision? Where do we see kind of the next step up in consciousness? And so I want to share this. So we're listening for this. So a few days ago, I listened to the acceptance speech by 36-year-old James Tallarico, who's the Democratic candidate for the Texas Senate. There's a lot happening in Texas. It's interesting. And here's one of the new visions arising. And in astrology, we really feel that new vision Aries channels through people. And we're at this, because we're at a crossroads, we're looking at, what vision is going to remake the foundations of our country and help us sense who we are as a country. And we're in that in between. So maybe some of you listened to James Tellerico in his acceptance speech, but he says, we're done being divided. We're done being played. We're done being pitted against each other. And the old politics is dying and a new politics is being born. Totally Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries. And he's young, he's 36. So he talks about how the real struggle isn't between right and left, but top and bottom. And he's accused powerful interests of constantly stoking cultural conflict so citizens won't notice what's happening economically. And he says, uh, hi, Molly. Yes, we do know his birth information, at least some of it, but I'm going to keep going here and I'll respond to that in a bit. They want us to focus on how we're different instead of how we're the same, because our unity is a threat to their wealth and power. One of his big themes is love your neighbor, loving your neighbor, and unity and moral responsibility to care for others. So we're at this threshold moment where in some ways, it's the higher level masculine in terms of channeling through him coming in that contains the moment with strength and perseverance to weigh the actions to come. So let me start with the slideshow now. So it seems for years and years, I've been using the subtitle, What Values Will Lead Us into the Future? And that's the question. That's what we're working with. And it's a big crossroads in terms of those values. So I just want to give a larger view as I talk about what happened when the United States attacked Iraq and that global situation, which we can see being triggered. And there's a number of things that are triggering the situation right now. So Mars square Uranus, we just finished being in an eclipse season. I'll talk about that a little bit. It's interesting that this attack started when Mercury's retrograde in Pisces, which I'll talk a bit about. And then we're going to watch a grouping of planets go into Aries, starting with Venus and then the Sun at the spring equinox, and eventually, of course, Mercury and Mars in April. And that will activate the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and the Aries vortex, which basically means quick quick moving change and checking the reality that's coming into being. Uh, that's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So here's today's chart. And you can see there's Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn, Neptune, just going into Aries. And this is the Aries vortex. So we've talked a lot about this, but this is like a quickening that brings up issues of power, powerlessness, what's been hidden, we're bringing it to the surface, and then channeling it through Saturn, Neptune, which can say, as we see what's going on, old systems are dissolving, new ones are trying to be born. We're looking deeper into the structures that govern us. So there was a powerful solar eclipse on, I think it was February 18th or something. We'll see that. I'm going to go over that. And okay, let's see. I think, of course, this is so interesting. We've talked a lot about this, Sedna conjunct Uranus. So it isn't just Uranus trying Pluto, quickening and bringing things up and then testing them, but uh, the betrayed feminine is also in this, feminine being the feminine values, and then a transformation happening around those, what's been exiled to start to come to our collective awareness. I do think this is interesting too, that Chiron is conjunct Eris. Chiron, the wounded healer, Eris. Eris is the goddess of, I think of her, of battle, of feeling left out, of uh, revenge. So there's this wound we're dealing with being left out, uh, the wounded masculine, etc. And so we're working with the symbolic archetypes of this time that give us a story. And I just encourage all of you to reflect on these archetypes in your own way that brings forward something unique that I haven't spoken of. So we've been in this eclipse season, and the solar eclipse was February 17th, and the lunar eclipse March 3rd. So we've been in this period of time where there's an intensification of energy that's taking place. And that's what the eclipses do. They intensify the energy that we're feeling down here on planet Earth, and they often mark turning points. So they can activate collective, unconscious collective drivers and mark major turning points in world events. So let's take a look at them. So this was the solar eclipse, February 17th. You can see it's at the end of Aquarius there. And at this late degree of Aquarius, there's often some kind of culmination starting. It can be a rupture happening, especially as that solar eclipse is squaring Uranus. So it brings in a powerful shaking up force at that time, breaking down, breaking through, unexpected. So we could look at themes as a sudden ending or withdrawing from something that was once central to one's identity or country's identity. There could be a new direction emerging, and especially taking note that this is square Uranus, because here something new is trying to happen. We're kind of being led into, well, you could think of the solar eclipse, not the lunar, but the solar on the north node, led into this turning point. But it's in dialogue with Uranus, which is saying there's a shaking, there's an unexpected, there's a crisis going on that we're working with in order to break into the new. That's one way to talk about it. So here's the solar eclipse on the United States chart. Now, if you're not familiar with charts, don't just listen to the storyline, because the charts can get pretty overwhelming. And there's so much that's going on in the chart. So let me tell you the story. One of the biggest things at first is to take note that this solar eclipse happened on the USA moon. So the moon in a country's chart is the people. It's the masses. It's the living emotional body in the country. And it reflects the mood and the emotional climate of the country. Um, so it also represents women, families, domestic life. And it says that this is highlighted now. It's not only highlighted in unexpected ways, but it's also um, feeling a jolt, a sudden crisis, a waking up that's trying to happen, something new coming in. That's the Uranus square the moon, a strong tension with this turning point, this destiny point. And, we could think of, it's activating the moon, and that's maybe bringing up the Epstein files in your minds. This Uranus square, the USA moon, has been going on for a year at least, but it's reaching its peak right now, especially with the solar eclipse. But it also says there's something in the masses that feels really unstable, and the masses are feeling this crisis. And so we also see this Uranus trining Pluto in the USA chart, which is activating some deeper level to be exposed. Some deeper level is being exposed as we create, there's the Saturn Neptune conjunction, as we create a new foundation for our country. Now, the other point I'd like to bring up is that transiting Pluto's almost on the USA South Node. And that'll be exact February of next year to October 2029. But any astrologer would say it's in influence right now. This would happen once in 248 years. So, what does that mean? And well, astrologers look at activations of the nodes as karmic and destiny turning points. And so Pluto will bring up the depths. Some call it soul evolution. It'll bring up the shadow material. It's a death rebirth process. It's looking at issues of power and powerlessness. But the thrust of it is the evolutionary necessity to transform. So we could say that what's happening is these old patterns, uh, attachment and emotional residue are coming up. Old ways of doing things are coming up for us to look at, for us to confront, for us to transform. And this is all happening when Uranus squares the moon and the Saturn Neptune conjunction happens. So it can mirror unresolved dynamics. So when you think about that, unresolved dynamics, I mean, there's probably many things that come to mind. So let's move forward here. So this is this solar eclipse I talked about. It'll be interesting for you to think about, well, what was happening for me in February and what new doors opened for me, or what opportunities were before me, or where did I feel led to go? And it would have been, of course, because it was squaring to Uranus, uh, an awaker, a disruptor, something that breaks open the possibilities that you could lean into. So the year begins, as I said in the January talk, with Mars conjuncting the Sun through mid-February. So there's a big Mars influence. At the end of February, Mars squared Uranus, which activated quick moving aggression. Now, it doesn't always have to activate quick moving aggression. I think of Mars and Uranus. When I think of them, they both represent lightning. So Mars represented lightning before Uranus was discovered in the 1700s. And so think of the invisible energy, electrical energy that activates the sky, that changes the electrical balance in the sky, is being activated, but there's tension there. That's the square. There's tension. So that tension can be the impulse to attack. And so when Mars is next to the sun, we're really looking at our values around war, leadership, the masculine, violence, domination. And I wanted to point out, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, Mars right now has entered Pisces, but it will enter Aries April 9th through May 18th, which could be a significant time in terms of what's happening worldwide. Okay. So here's the chart of the attack, and that's February 28th. It was a Saturday. And of course, this is, a teaching chart for sure, to see how that Mars activation by Uranus sudden, quickening, unexpected crisis, activates in a tense way Mars, which is definitely the need to assert. It can be aggression. And Mars in general activates someone's chart or the country's chart when it's in relationship to Uranus, when it's in aspect to Uranus, when it activates an eclipse point, and when it's transiting key planets in your chart or a country's chart. Now, what's interesting about this, we see two of those activation points right away. Um, so one of those is that Uranus is squaring Mars, but the other one is this is the exact point where the eclipse happened. So wherever eclipse happens, there's a certain sensitivity within that degree. It's a potent degree. Something is changing. There's a turning point. Something's opening up. Something's being given the opportunity to be reviewed, an old destiny to come in to resolve in a new way. And Mars brings its energy and activates it. So not only was it activated when the eclipse happened, but it's activated again the day of the attack. So you could see with a Mars transit like that, the collective psyche or the leadership is energized toward decisive action rather than negotiation. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, besides Mars obviously being the planet of aggression, um, domination, winning, uh, conflict, it also affects the nervous system because it's the impulse to act or defend, to react, to mobilize, to assert the life force. So it psychologically, it's related to adrenaline, urgency, fight or flight response. So you might think about yourself and what you've been going through. How has your nervous system been activated? And what are you doing for yourself about that? There's a psychic channeler, Lee Harris. Maybe many of you have listened to him, but he talks at length in his March talk about calming that nervous system and getting grounded, and then how to attune to the incoming light that's happening. Because as the challenges of the dark or the less conscious grow and dominate, it activates a return of the light. And again, we are at that threshold, trying to break through to a new level. Okay, so let's go on. Um, this is again the same chart, the USA um, on the day of the attack. Okay, this is the chart. It's interesting that Mercury has gone retrograde. Now, notice that Mercury's retrograde. So let me just say, um, is this okay? This is the 28th, but it went retrograde the 25th at 22 Pisces, and it'll go back to 8 Pisces, I believe. It's interesting that these were decisions were made during Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And we would say, oh, Mercury is in its detriment or its fall in the sign Pisces because Mercury wants to be orderly. Instead, the mind is impacted by emotions, by the unconscious, by all the previous events, and it's in this collective sea, and it's hard to get clarity. Now look at this Mercury retrograde is opposite the USA Neptune, and it's squaring Mars. So it's really highlighting the confusion or the lack of clarity or specific goals as we entered the attack to Iran. The other thing that I find interesting is, let's see if I can say this in English as easily as possible. First, the astrology is the North Node is in Pisces opposite the South Node in Virgo, and they're squaring or an aspect to the USA Uranus. To me, that's saying whatever the karma and the destiny is right now for the United States. We're at this crisis, a sudden crisis, sudden breakthrough, where there could be um, disruption to a great degree, and there could be awakening. So just pointing that out now. So here's Donald Trump's chart. Again, this is a big teaching moment because what was happening that made Donald Trump want to take the action he did from an astrological point of view, it's very obvious, and that's that transiting Mars opposite his own Mars, that transiting Mars square Uranus, sudden unexpected events, impulsive decisions, was affecting his own impulses, his own drives. Now, it's interesting because this Mars has been hanging out these last degrees, and Uranus has been up here squaring Trump's Mars and ascendant for a bit of time, a year at least. But this can feel like he's feeling attacked or exposed by others. And so this is how he's responding. So we can think, in what way might he feel attacked? Could it be the Epstein files? Could it be what's happening in Minnesota? I mean, I'm sure you all have some interesting thoughts on that as well. So he decides to take an action. Now, this is very interesting because you can see this is the map of Israel, and Israel has the same Mars in Leo as Donald Trump within 1 to 2 degrees, but it's also sitting on Trump's ascendant, which means they resonate there in terms of how they want to take action. Um, and it can say the same thing as we talked about earlier. There was this drive, this impetus to take action with um, this aspect of Mars, Uranus, danger, sudden, unexpected, quick. Um, okay, so I'm going to go on because here's Donald Trump and Israel. You can see the Mars are the same. You can see Israel's sun is at his midheaven. Um, so Israel's sun, there's something that really resonates with Trump about Israel's identity. And you can see that Jupiter, Israel's Jupiter, is on his moon as well. So this would show a strong affinity between Israel and himself. And if you look at this, we see Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, his Mars is the same degree as Trump's. Very interesting that all three charts have this Mars at between 26 and 28 Leo, and that's what's being activated at this time. Okay, there's Donald Trump and Netanyahu. Very similar desire to take dramatic action, um, to win. Okay. And I just wanted to also show this. This is the progress chart of the United States. What's happening to the United States? Where are we? The progression can show a picture or a story of what's trying to take place. And so, what I'm pointing out in this progress chart of the USA chart, and I believe that's so the progress chart is February 19th. The progressed moon has moved a little bit away from that Chiron, but here we have the wounded healer being activated in Aries opposite Mars in Leo. So it's really, really highlighting the theme of the wounded masculine, how we take action, what our foundations have been, and how we take action. And with the square to Jupiter, it's enlarging it. So to me, the story is there's trying to come to some kind of rebalance between the feminine values of inclusiveness or empathy and the masculine values of courage and being bold in that movement for meeting the future, and to heal the old patriarchy that has gotten activated with the presidency of Donald Trump. So here's Trump's chart, and you can see Mars is one of his strongest planets. The masculine and winning and uh, being seen as a strong, dominant person, very old values. And then you can also see this is Prometheus or Uranus being very strong in his chart. And when we look at his chart, we might say, oh, he's meant to come out as a public figure in this life and be disruptive because that's what the chart says. But it could also play through a different story as far as bringing in a future vision that can help lead us forward. Okay. I don't feel that happening right now. So we have just reviewed how the way the planets lined up really triggered old behavior in terms of aggression, assertion, conflict. And so what I did is I took a look at Iran's chart, and this is April 19th. You can see April 19th, Mars, Saturn are conjunct. What I'm pointing out is that right now, that Saturn Neptune, whoops, conjunction, which is spread a little. It's 2 degrees Aries and Saturn is 7. That conjunction is saying something very specific about Iran's chart. And what it's saying is that this dissolving of the old, this rebuilding some new story for itself is becoming very visible because that conjunction's happening on Iran's ascendant. It represents, that ascendant represents how a nation enters the world stage, its identity and its immediate circumstances. So what this is saying is that there's a dissolution of an old identity, and the way the country projects itself is beginning to weaken, um, or the structures are breaking down. And during this time, there can be a struggle between idealism and authority. So, idealism, Neptune, authority, Saturn. A conflict between visionary movements and established structures of power. But it's a rebirthing process, and it's a signal of a new cycle for Iran. But that Neptune can bring confusion, disorientation, and from a deeper aspect, a new story is trying to evolve. Now, it's interesting when Saturn and Mars goes on Iran's moon, because the moon represents the people, the feeling tone, and what it's saying is that there's a contraction, there's an obstacle here. And then we see Saturn exact on the moon again. What's the date of that? Let's see. That is December 13th. So basically, all year, Iran is feeling this pressure, this obstacle, a potential new beginning. Okay. And then there was the lunar eclipse, March 3rd. So lunar eclipses really bring up old emotional material that really needs to be seen, to be released, to be resolved, um, and especially uh, in that Pisces Virgo axis that we have going on. It can be, feeling overwhelmed, uh, feeling helpless at the effect of, or it can be imaginative and creative, but there's trying to find a grounding here as old feelings come up, unconscious patterns come up, old beliefs come up. We're needing to review it. And it is interesting that that's happening right now, this week, during this time, while Mercury is retrograde also in Pisces. So here's the lunar eclipse. Maybe some of you saw it, maybe not. And just thinking about this background archetypal planetary alignments. So we've talked about it a lot, that Saturn and Neptune are conjunct at 0 Aries. So we're right now in the very beginning of the old structures dissolving and rebuilding based on a new vision. And this is the beginning of a 36-year cycle. At the same time, Pluto is moving through Aquarius, bringing up our collective shadow and demanding and pushing an evolution of how we use power within the community, within the group. Um, so we could say that Pluto transforms wherever power has been concentrated. And in Aquarius, the power lies in networks, corporate systems, technological platforms, financial architectures. I like that. And global alliances. And it reveals what's been hidden, what kind of corruption is inside the system. And we call that the collective shadow. So what's not owned gets projected, and those shadow material become visible, while Saturn conjunct Neptune is seeking to dissolve those old structures that have held this together, and Pluto's intensifying the process. Um, so we can see like the Epstein files is a good example of what was going on in that hierarchy of financial well-being and the global collective movement of networks as well. I don't want you to forget Sedna. I think Sedna is a really important planetary archetype that we're now looking at, we're awakening to, especially with Sedna conjunct Uranus. Just think, how often must it conjunct Uranus? Not very often. Maybe once every 100 years, I'm not sure. But it hasn't conjunct Uranus since it's been discovered, which makes it much more powerful. And here is the awakening of feminine values during disruption, during revolution. So this is the betrayal of the feminine or the exile of the feminine archetype, but that the story goes, she falls into the deep, and so she's guarding the collective deep, the feeling self, and she's awakening. It's time for her to wake and put things in order, return things to order. So there's a balance between the masculine and the feminine. So she doesn't rise to power or ascend to power, she descends. And from that descent, new life is born. So we've talked a lot about her story, how she was betrayed by her father, who cut off her fingers and she fell to the bottom of the sea. Um, she is indigenous wisdom and uh, this awakening of what has been frozen. So this is a big transit that can take place over a number of years. We're definitely looking at, a 10-year interim. Right now, she is in the Aries vortex. She's trining Pluto. This is like a big awakening now. And what I would do is look at how it's awakening in you. How are you more compassionate to yourself? Look at where the empathy and inclusiveness is taking place in the culture or the country, and where it's not taking place and where it's getting checked, because that's trying to come in. And I think just as, yang follows yin, what has been intensely controlled and repressed is rising up. And so one way to talk about it is when the dark gets more intense, the light arises, and you can see and feel in yourself, where are you aligning with that deeper self, where you're aligning with the vision of what can be possible and holding it for each other. How are you tending to that? Because that's what's being called for right now. More and more light to come in, more and more in the face of the dissolving of structure, in the face of uncertainty, Saturn Neptune conjunction, kind of holding the light in terms of what's possible, the new vision, uh, transforming the old. So I'm curious. I'd love to hear from anybody if anyone would like to ask questions or make comments. You have to unmute yourself.
Sue, this is Mara.
Hi, Maura.
And we were down in Big Sur with clear skies.
Yeah.
And so I was awake from probably 11:30 to 5, checking the progression of the eclipse.
Great.
And it was really spectacular as the full eclipse happened. All the stars popped out.
Oh, I love that.
And I wasn't close enough to see it over the ocean, but I sure wished I was because it was a quiet ocean that night. But
Was it orange?
yes,
Yeah.
oh yeah, very orange. And so I was tired the next day, but Wednesday I was so frazzled I could hardly. I slept well, that night. But Wednesday, I was like unbelievable. I mean, I wanted to get out of this body.
Mm.
So I looked at my
Oh,
chart
yeah.
and I've got Pluto opposite Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
That's been going on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The Uranus return is
Mm-hmm.
still happening. Um, and the eclipse was just past my Mars Sun conjunction,
What is your Mars Sun conjunction more again?
8 degrees Virgo,
Yeah, and then
and the North Node is directly on that.
right, exactly. Do you have something at the end of Leo is
Yeah, Moon at 28.
there you go. Well, the solar eclipse was opposite your moon and the lunar eclipse was on your sun Mars and you were having the nodal return. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, very potent point for you. Did you feel like uh, something old came up to be released, or did you feel like there was an inner motivation to move a certain way that was different?
No, I think what I felt was immense overwhelm.
Uh-huh.
Chiron squaring Chiron.
Yeah, you have those generational
Right,
aspects that are happening.
right. So I just mentioned it because I'm not the only one that
Right, exactly.
is, that is in this overwhelmed time.
Yeah, definitely with all this Pisces going on and
Mm.
um, the lineup of the planets. That's one reason I mentioned how Mars could activate the nervous system
Right.
and how, hmm?
Oh, I said right. That's why I brought it up was
Yeah, good.
because you were talking about that, and it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and how so it brings our attention to how we're caring for ourselves at this time and can stay, aware that this is the weather we're moving through
Mhm.
and how might we come back to to center at this time. So I really appreciate you sharing your experience of it. And I always think, isn't it interesting that to me, the eclipses are like miracles of this cosmos, of this solar system. And I think of it as opportunities for, if we look at it symbolically, for our higher self and our physical in personality self and our unconscious self to come in alignment. And at the solar eclipse, that moon moves in front of the sun, and we could imagine something can be opening up, but something can be seen and illuminated that'll help us in this present moment. Uh,
Well, I
yeah.
I, I found that the next day we went to the Legion of Honor and the De Young to see the Bouquet to the Arts,
Mm,
where people arrange flowers to that are inspired by a painting, a sculpture, an ancient artifact. And driving up the coast on the most beautiful, clear day in nature, and then in the uh, outpouring of human nature in the museums and the flower arrangements was so healing to that
mhm.
frazzle overwhelm.
Yeah,
So when you speak about what to do, how to cope with this, both nature and beauty
exactly.
and creativity,
Yeah,
I think are so very healing and inspiring.
exactly. Thank you. Definitely. The Japanese say, go walk in the forest. And um, to be in beauty, as John O'Donohue would say, it just really settles the heart. And then there's other things we can do, like take a bath, listen to music we love, and be around people who are uplifting as well, or animals. But these are times where this is important to do, especially in the face of what's going on at this time. So I really thank you, Maura, for sharing your example. And I love seeing those flower arrangements. I've never seen them in life, but they imitate paintings, right? But people use flowers to do it, flower
I
arrangements.
took lots of pictures.
Okay, good. I'd love to see them. Okay, thank you
Hey,
so much.
hi, it's Molly. Are you ready for another question or do you want to go
Sure,
on?
sure. I'll take another question.
Um, I'm looking at my ascendant at 27 Taurus. Goodness, can't even say it. That's
Yeah.
how it feels. 27 Taurus. So I've had Uranus there
Yep.
for a while, and I'm listening to you talk about the Uranus square.
To Mars.
Um, let's see, I wrote it down and I had a question, and it's regarding the eclipse.
Okay. Yeah, the eclipse. Thank you.
The eclipse, my Chiron is 29 Aquarius. Eclipse
Mm-hmm.
is 28. So I'm curious, I know my experience of that because I'm living it, but
Mm-hmm.
also the Sedna element, as it's moving across that and going into Gemini with um, Uranus over my ascendant. So could you offer me some words that
Yeah,
that might help me articulate a little bit of what I'm
sure.
experiencing?
Yeah. So I'll just say some of the archetypal uh,
Great.
energy, and then we could talk about it a little bit. But Uranus on your ascendant uh, really is a big turning point in terms of change in how you move out into the world. So it can be disruptive. It can lead to, how do I orient myself now? Because maybe I've stepped into some change, or I'm looking for change, or change was upon me, and I'm still getting my feet on the ground to know how to move forward. Now, it sounds to me, Molly, like Chiron is squaring your ascendant at 28 or whatever, Aquarius.
Correct.
Yeah. And that would be probably in your house of career or public standing out in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Oh, wow.
is that striking home? Is that,
Well, it's melding. I mean, I see the issue and then the stimulus of the eclipse and the transit.
yeah. Do you want to talk about that issue now?
It feels very current, like it's happening every day-ish. Um, an ongoing question for a while now has been, now that I've moved out of a regular kind of 9 to 5 thing, what am I doing and offering? And so that is evolving.
Yes.
Um, some really significant changes in my some personality and habits, family habits,
Yeah.
historical habits
Hmm.
regarding wounds and ancestral kind of wounds that have carried on, and addressing those differently, different healing choices. Um, I don't, I mean, it feels transformative. I don't know what the sort of sudden unexpected flavor
Well,
is exactly. Not that that really matters. It's happening anyway.
yeah. Well, I think you really articulated that transit. Now, the sudden unexpected, um, that's been going on for a while.
Okay.
So, I think of it as there's a disruption, there's a change, there's a potential to broaden your perspective on your life, or
Yeah.
how you meet the present moment, how you go out in the world. And for you, it's connected to the wounded healer. So, what teaching is another one for Chiron. So, what you're bringing out, but, writing, doing some journaling, writing would be really interesting. I'd be interested to hear more about, kind of what's going on for you, because it's a potent, we could say evolutionary turning point for you. And
Uh-huh.
it could be small, it could be large. I have a Taurus rising as well. I was having that Uranus a little earlier. Um, and I have Pluto at my midheaven.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So, for me, being a double Taurus, I think it's more contained, and I feel the pressure within, and then you're in a in-between space. And I don't know if you're feeling that in-between space.
Definitely. Yes,
Okay. So
definitely.
how do we be with that in-between space is really important. There's a great little book by Pema Chodron called Comfortable with Uncertainty. And in the preface to that book, and I forget who wrote the foreword or the preface, it says that, uncertainty is really the reality of the present moment.
Uh-huh.
And so
Oh,
it's interesting to be in that not knowing place, but to be very tuned in. And I'm thinking of what Morris said, like when you take a walk, what are you hearing? What are you smelling? And then listening deeply. It's like making time. So everyone might feel this, to make time to really listen deeply to what's trying to emerge right now, because we're all in this Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 Aries,
right.
beginning of Aries. Something new is trying to emerge for us. And some of it might be more interior, more exterior, more like, okay, I'm reaching out to learn some or be connected, or, I'm going to take an action in the community. I don't know. Is that helpful for you?
Yes. One of the things very specifically to the tuning in and listening deeply is that more meditative practice, but also and writing daily reflections on what this change it feels like and how it's manifesting. Those are two things that have just become part of my current habit. But at night, I am consciously requesting, I'm ready. It's that sort of
Mm,
just I'm ready to know or hear or be guided, and I've been in this a willingness that I haven't that feels newer in this transition. There's a willingness to step forward into
beautiful.
what's happening. Yeah, that's the remarkable and delightful change that I'm feeling very much more currently.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think of that as Uranus, the willingness
Aha.
to step forward. I like to say the willingness to lean into the new, I'm having this memory of sitting up on Glacier Point in Yosemite with my friend Donna and looking at we're looking right at Half Dome, but you can see the whole park almost. The view is amazing. I think of that as Uranus. Like at first it can be somewhat shocking, on a personal level, like, oh, I got to make a change. I'm feeling restless, but potentially can open up the view for ourselves and we can step in a new way.
Uh,
Yeah.
Get
Okay,
that.
good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So here we're looking at Mercury retrograde in the water signs. It's interesting because Mercury uh, in the water signs, in terms of the overall outer planets, there's a lot going on in fire and air, the yang energy, but Mercury retrograde is pulling us back in for reflection, for feeling our feelings. It's interesting that the attack on Iran happened during that Mercury retrograde and how it's stirring the collective, and the collective is being stirred too by what was happening in Minnesota as well. Um, so this is from February 25th to March 20th. It's excellent time to rethink old habit patterns, and emotional responses to life's challenges. Um, that's an interesting mindfulness exercise. So here's the chart for Mercury retrograde. Uh, this is tomorrow, and this is when Mercury conjuncts the sun. So typically, Mercury will go retrograde in this case, at 22 Pisces and back to 8 Pisces. So you want to look in your chart. Where is that happening in my chart? What might I be reviewing? Um, so what is it stirring up as well at deeper levels? Where am I feeling restless? Where do I feel North Node in Pisces, like a call to embrace more creativity, more imagination, more spiritual alignment? Um, where do I feel overwhelmed? Where do I feel confusion? And typically, so this is tomorrow, when we see Mercury retrograde conjunct the sun, we would say, okay, it's seeding a new cycle now, a deeper awareness, what needs to be completed. It's in the last sign of the zodiac before uh, the sun goes into Aries at the spring equinox and everything gets quickened and activated. It's very powerful spring equinox. So let's take another look here. So here's the United States chart. Um, and it's showing where the Mercury retrograde is. It's went retrograde at 22 Pisces, February 20th, opposite Neptune and squaring Mars, which I find very interesting because when Mercury is in Pisces opposite Neptune, it's really hard to get to the truth of things. It could be a time of overwhelm or confusion. It's not linear. So we think about, what was happening around February 20th? What's been happening? So it's squared Mars. So is there an impulse to act without having consciousness of it? Um, it's interesting that it's conjunct Sedna right now, and I feel like Sedna is in the collective right now. I feel it personally. I'd love to hear what you all have to say, but I feel it personally in the victims of the Epstein files, if that's a way I might frame that. Speaking up about the exiled feminine. How is it being heard? But then again, I can think of a lot of situations where the feminine is reaching out, is growing and saying, this isn't right, or let's get closer to the essence and source of things. Let's bring in more empathy, more light, more love. It's trying to happen in the face of the opposite. So, also, during this time, and this is like right now, the nodes are squaring USA Uranus. So just, okay, what's that mean? Okay, one way I might look at it is that again, it's like a destiny turning point in how we break through, how we take a stand. It awakens revolution. So we might see that going on right now. Let's see. So this is what we got here. This is the new moon, March 18th. So now the new moon in Pisces, again, the very end of Pisces. So these in degrees are really about a culmination. What do we need to see in order to go to the next sign? And in this case, the next sign is Aries, where it's going to conjunct the dissolving structure or giving form to a new vision or putting lives in concrete form. But it wants to say what needs to be finished. So in our own lives, we might look at that for ourselves, which is very difficult to do. Finish what needs to be finished, clear things out, spend quality time in reverie, in feeling our hearts, that water element, because of two things we might see in the charts. One, instead of squaring Uranus, it's sextiling Uranus, which can say that this is a good timing to lean into the new. This is a good timing to take a stand for what we believe in. And there's encouragement at this time to communicate it. Mercury conjunct the North Node, that's where Mercury's going to go direct at 8 degrees. So this is a big time to speak, to write, to review, to maybe to edit, to feel tuned in to a deeper flow, a deeper spiritual flow, a deeper empathetic flow within your own life. Spring equinox. Okay, if anybody wants to say anything as I move along, just call out to me. So this is a very potent spring equinox. It's really highlighting this important 36-year cycle, Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries, that the old being dissolved, the new coming in. it's interesting to think about how astrologers have talked about 2026, have talked about 2025, 2026 with this unique outer planet uh, formation, which we've been calling the Aries vortex. I know that if you listen to or read, I'm forgetting his name. I forget his name. He did talk about war happening. And so for me, I'm thinking of this as what are our values here? What's really going on? What kind of new beginnings does the United States want to create for itself? And that's what we're looking at. So the old is getting activated, and we really are making decisions about what structures and systems are going to lead us forward. And we can see that happening everywhere. This is the date for the next No King's March, which I thought I'd bring in. You can see all the Aries energy happening that day, and it's like the sun is igniting that Aries vortex. This quick moving, rebellious, bringing up the old, bringing up the shadow, giving form to a vision, the sensitivity around what's communicated, and making it big. Jupiter trine Mercury, trine Mars. The moon's in Leo. Do the demonstration. This is the United States chart with the No King's March. Again, I find it really interesting to have Pluto on the south node, transiting Pluto on the south node of the USA chart. South node, our karmic past, where we're coming from. Pluto activating the deep, activating what's been repressed or hidden and bringing it to the surface to see what needs to be released, transformed. This Uranus square the moon on that day is very typical. A description of that would be the people get up and march. They're feeling rebellious because when we look at where the Saturn Neptune conjunction's happening down at the bottom of the USA chart, it's like the building of a new story for our country. What's going to be the story? Now, what's interesting, so this is March 28th. Saturn will be squaring Jupiter. Right now, Saturn may be squaring Venus. Basically, that's saying there's obstruction to the economy. There's a slowing down going. And this Saturn in Aries at the bottom of the chart is going to square the Venus on the No King's March. It'll square Jupiter. This is like a standoff almost, like, what decisions are we going to make in terms of how we're going to grow as well? And then Saturn will square the USA sun, and it'll go, so this is 13, it'll go to 14 degrees Aries, squaring the USA sun, and then it will go retrograde there. So that's a big moment that we're coming up to. The sun in the USA chart represents our sense of purpose. It represents the executive in our country. So that square is taking place in June, but because it's going retrograde at 14 Aries, squaring the USA sun, it's going to stay square to the sun through September. So this June through September is a time of confronting the leadership, of looking at what's working, what's not working, of stopping, of obstructing things or being obstructed. And you can see that um, in the USA chart, the sun squares Saturn in Libra in the house of public standing. We have formed a democracy of right human relations, but it's squaring the sun. It's like we're trying to give that form, we're trying to raise that consciousness continually, and it's in uh, polarization to our deep foundations, which say there's a wound of aggression there that we're seeking to deal with, we're seeking to look at, we're possibly coming to terms with as the issues from the past come up so that we can move forward in a new way. So it's all coming together at this point here, right now, in this month. Here's the April full moon. April Fool's Day. We've got a full moon in Libra, opposite the sun, Saturn, Neptune, squaring Jupiter. This square to Jupiter that we're having in a number of the charts can really enlarge the situation. Jupiter in Cancer wants to be protective, wants to be nurturing. And at this full moon on April 1st, how do we balance this need for negotiation, peace, balance with new activation, new possibilities? So trying to find that balance as well as we go into April. So I just want to review a little bit on a personal level. I would say, what insights are you receiving right now? What dreams are you having right now? And are you sensing a need for new beginnings? What do you want to let go of? On the physical level, the psychological level, looking at your sense of finances. How might you initiate new beginnings? Where do you need support? Where do you need to step into a more uplifted view to hold that vision to move forward? Because that's what's going to give us energy to take the steps we need to take. And in what way can you receive group support? How do you want to participate in the changes that are trying to happen? And what needs to settle within you so you can center and ground during this time? What I'm really watching for is when this Mars goes into Aries as well. And I believe it's April 9th, because that's going to really bring a lot of energy to this new beginning. And that's going to happen. Let's see here. Mars moves into Aries on April 9th, and it's in Aries until May 18th. So that's a pretty interesting time of quick energy activating that Mars. Maybe there's going to be more powerful conflict happening. And we're going to see how that plays out in April as well. Okay, so we're coming to the end of what I have presented for you today, but I'd love to hear any comments or questions. We've got a good 15 minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides and take a look here. So let me see here. Any questions?
Question. I have one. Jane here.
Hi, Jane.
Hi. I live in Canada, and I was just curious if if there was something you could say briefly about the Canada chart in relation to all these things that have happened.
Yeah,
Without,
gosh, I don't have the Canada chart in front of me. Too
okay,
bad.
it's okay.
Um, yeah. Do you know anything about the Canada chart?
No, I don't know country charts, but
Yeah.
just seeing how the prime minister here is responding to Trump and aligning with other countries, and things are changing in Canada quite a bit compared to always going along with the U.S. and being the little brother and stuff. But I don't need to talk about that now.
Well, I think you put your finger on it because those archetypes that are in play, which is Uranus, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, are all saying this is a big change time. There's a deconstruction of alliances. There's a
Hmm.
reconstruction of alliances. What are our values? Personally, for me, on the most part, not the total part, but on the most part, I believe that Donald Trump has embodied a lot of the shadow qualities within our country that our country needs to come to terms with. How are we going to move forward? Is that what we support? Is that what we don't support?
Yeah.
Um, and so to me, those qualities really align with the old patriarchal system. And we're having an opportunity to see them. And I think and so it's almost like a domino effect, as he reacts and responds, there's this domino effect in terms of shifting all the energy. He is known as a disruptor. Uranus conjunct his sun. And so he's disrupting systems. And no matter who you hear talk about the political environment, uh, it seems like everybody agrees it isn't about going back to the old systems or the
Yeah.
old normal. It's about envisioning new systems and being aware also of what's coming in, the effect of the new technology as well. What's happening is that there's a lot of people working on these new systems, and bringing a higher consciousness into planning the systems that we're living in. And so, are they going to come forward? It's almost like, um, after Obama came into office, there was like a backlash, and that we had to move through that backlash, which had significance in terms of uh, people feeling left out as well, and looking at where our country is. I'm really interested in this young man, James Tellerico, because he really represents a new vision. And he's so, when we heard like Donald Trump say at the memorial service for Charlie, I forget his last name, um, and Charlie's wife said, it's important to bring out love. She's an evangelical Christian. And then Trump said, no, I don't do that. I work with hate. And this young man, Tellerico, is saying, the whole system of politics has to change because we've got to bring in that power of love instead of hate. That seems really new to me. Any discussion on that? Anybody want to comment on that?
It's brilliant. He sounds brilliant. I loved hearing him speak. I didn't hear his acceptance speech, but I read an article about him a few weeks ago that was, or heard him interviewed on TV or something. Anyway, he sounds quite new and different and expressing just what you're speaking about.
Yeah, so what we're looking at, who are the people who are embodying these new visions that can lead us forward, into the future. Anybody think of anybody else that comes to mind?
Well, I think there's a lot of poets that are and musicians that are kind of leading the way too. Like I'm thinking Patti Smith, for example, who's been quite outspoken about what's going on and also like but very spiritual too, at the same
Mhm.
time. So it's like leading with spirit rather than just with maybe thought or sort of the combativeness, right?
Mhm.
Creating something that will help us to kind of heal and come together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah. And even indivisible is another, a very Aquarian thing to look at it, people coming together to protect other people. Um, and I'm thinking of my neighbor who's creating um, a whole new system for the future of the United States and gathering with people, leaders across the country to bring in this new system. So it's important to, feel as we feel the intensity of this time to also, hold on to this is the beginning. This is the beginning of a new birth. And can we hold the vision at a certain level without being overwhelmed and despairing? And where do we want to connect with community who holds those values that we hold? Um,
Sue, it's Kat.
yeah.
I just wanted to say that all of a sudden Tai Chi is all over the internet,
Oh, great.
social media, all over social media.
Hmm.
It's just like I don't understand it, but it's all over the place. So I feel like it's a reminder, if nothing else.
I think it's definitely a reminder, and I think it's time people are beginning to understand more about energy and more about the importance of attuning. What would you say, Kat, if you were to sum up the gift of Tai Chi?
Well, just the chi, as you said, the energy, just the idea that there's as much in, invisible as there is visible going on, and to each of us have that capability of discovering and moving energy both individually and then collectively.
And this could be, this is one of the new visions. I mean, if it's all over the internet, it's holding a certain archetypal vision of attunement that's trying to come in. So, we could say, here we are in the in between. And we've been saying that for a while. And in the in between, the old story of the world is loosening its hold, and the new one hasn't fully taken shape. Now, it's hard to see, it's hard to say that when we've just attacked Iran, because that seems like a really old story. And yet we don't know where it's moving us or what will come up out of that in terms of response. But what the astrology is saying is we're in the beginning of the middle of this great turning, where what's being invited, especially as Pluto goes through Aquarius, lining up with Saturn and Neptune, Uranus into Gemini, it's inviting um, human participation. It's inviting us to participate in what the future will be. And so we're witnessing these archetypal energies and how we want to connect with others and support each other's and support the vision, not so much heavily against, but how can we raise that vibration together? And what I'm thinking about in my mind, and there's no right or wrong, but I'm thinking about how uh, Tellerico was running against the Texas Congresswoman. I forget her name right now.
Jasmine Crockett.
Okay, Jasmine Crockett. Now, I don't know Jasmine Crockett, but what I've heard is she was like the fierce feminine taking a stand uh,
Right.
against Trump. But what happened was this young man, I don't know how old Jasmine is, but this young man who, you know, is talking about love, is talking about great change, instead of dividing us, that those two were up and he came forward in Texas. Now there might be other things because isn't she black? And he's a white man. I mean, there might be other dynamics at play there. But, what we watch as astrologers is how do these archetypal energies move through the collective? How do they move and embody through people? And so then I'm watching people, I'm watching the events that are happening. I'm watching for where the new vision is, and how can I support that? I'm looking within myself and feeling. Oh, wow. I mean, for me personally, and I have an Aries moon and I'm going, okay, at some point Saturn's just going to sit on that moon. What's that going to mean? I say that too, but what I feel is this certain restlessness, um, to recreate many things in my life. And then I'm thinking when Saturn's on my moon, what's working, what's not working in my emotional response to things. And one of the things I'm thinking about that's coming to mind for me is I studied with Alan Oken for a year, one-on-one, famous astrologer. He passed away not long ago. But he said to me, Sue, your chart has more polarity in it than anybody's chart I've seen. And I can feel that within me. What do I do when I have these push and pulls? I mean, there's a constant kind of push and pull. And I feel like when we feel that within ourselves, we are at a threshold. We're at a threshold of how can we find balance in the different needs that are calling out to us, and how can we integrate that? And it's kind of like, for me, it's like if I'm pouring water from one cup to another cup, trying to find that balance in my own nature. So I don't know if many of you are feeling that, but I can feel that this activation of finding a new balance, of finding a new pathway, of finding a new way. Anybody want to comment on that in the few minutes we have left?
Hey, Sue, this is Steve.
Hi,
Um,
Steve.
what the fellow Tellerico you mentioned from
Mm-hmm.
Texas, I
Mm-hmm.
listened to him in an interview that was blocked by CBS a week or two ago. Anyway, what he showed, and it was discussed in points, he marks a return to the uh, to what's referred to as a lateral morality versus a vertical morality, which is um, uh, claiming moral high ground by appealing to a higher authority, like the people above me in this. Whereas he spoke of the the love thy neighbor
Yeah,
concept.
interesting.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know what I'm thinking of, Steve, but I kind of have this memory of you talking about that before. Not in reference to him, but in reference to something else.
Uh, well, I may have. I mean, it struck a a chord with me, a good chord, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I looked up Canada. Canada was 1 July 1867, midnight. It gained its sovereignty, FYI. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, you introduced so many concepts and ideas in this talk. I appreciate it very much. This is one time in which I was barely able to, actually, I wasn't always able to keep up. So,
Ooh, you know
no,
what? I'm trying hard to
no, you're doing great.
simplify things.
You're doing great. I just Busy time.
Yeah, it's a busy time. Busy time. So, is Suzanne here?
So I just want to make one comment
Yeah.
that there are several upcoming young politicians.
Yes.
Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, and Jasmine is a very powerful person, but um, I saw when Tolerico was
Mm.
studying to be a priest that that Christian influence was going to be very big. But there's I can't remember Maxwell Frost. There's quite a few up and coming young people
The
that
mayor of New York.
the mayor of New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's 34.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Definitely.
It's how is Trump gonna fall? Is the Epstein thing gonna finally?
Well, there's a couple ways I would look at that. One is when Saturn squares the sun, and I told you the dates of that's going to be a vulnerable time for him. Um, and that is, let's see where it is again. It's like June through September, and then again into, so 2027 is going to be a very, very challenging year for him because that Saturn will square his Venus Saturn as well. And what would be a good chart to look at too, if it if we could use it, I'm not even sure we could use it, but um, the chart for the Republican Party and see what it says as well. But I think what's happening right now is Trump is coming into a harder time. By that transiting Saturn square the USA Sun, transiting Saturn's going to square his Mercury. He has Uranus squaring his Mars and his ascendant. How he moves out in the world is going to change. But the challenge, I think, that we're seeing is that when he gets opposed, he can get more dug in. And so we'll just have to see. That's what I have to say. It'll be really interesting when Mars goes into Aries in April and in the beginning of May. But regardless of that, I want to, I want to come back to that idea of that there's a lot of new arising, and we want to watch where that vision is arising, who's embodying it as well, and how it's coming into ourselves. So I'm going to ask again, is Suzanne here?
I'm here and ready.
Okay, let's,
Okay, thank you, Sue, for another wonderful class.
I'm trying to
I'm
get
with
you.
Steve.
Where
Oh,
are you?
I'm right next to you, and
Okay,
I'm
there
right.
you are. There you are. Okay, great. Okay, Suzanne. So thank you for
All right.
bringing nature and your poetry to us today for healing and integration, and to go out during March with a higher vibration, as you always bring in with your poetry.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for a wonderful class. Okay, Earth's shadow once more crossed the face of our moon. Blood orange, they say, slipping away too soon into the redwoods, reaching out their new growth, like long, slender fingers, as if taking an oath to serve as an example, touching the sky, holding firm to the earth while guiding our eye to see beyond all the suffering and pain, offering inspiration so we might gain the higher perspective that the heavens can tell, where time and space dissolve into so much more, reflecting deep within our own aching core, clinging to the lifeboat of faint faith and hope, seeking a strong handhold that can help us cope with the insanity of war and power. That unity and peace will one day shower down on this aching world, cleansing her once more, and loving compassion will touch every shore.
Beautiful, Suzanne. Thank you so much. Yay. That's a good way to end today. So thank you, everybody. And I'm going to stop the recording.